Today's reading is from Rays of the One Light, Weekly Commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. Jesus Christ said in the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 10, "Think not that I am come to send peace on earth. I come not to send peace, but a sword. For I am come to set a man at variance against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's foes shall be they of his own household. He that loveth father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he that loveth son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And he that taketh not his cross and followeth after me is not worthy of me. He that findeth his life shall lose it, and he that loseth his life for my sake shall find it." God tests the firmness of our faith. The sword described here is the sword of discrimination. The struggle Jesus describes is not a war against unknown enemies, but the struggle with our own attachment to all that is nearest and dearest to us, humanly speaking. Ultimately, it is a war against the ego itself, and against anything with which we surround ourselves to bolster the ego's fragile sense of security. When Yogananda, as a boy, fled to the Himalayas to embrace a life of solitary meditation, he was apprehended by his older brother Ananta and brought home again. At a certain point, before he would accept defeat, he whispered to his friend Amar, his companion on the flight, "Let us slip away when the opportunity offers. We can go on foot to Rishikesh." But Amar, whose brother had accompanied Ananta, had turned pessimist, disclaiming any intention of continuing their adventure. Yogananda's memorable comment on Amar's refusal was, "He was enjoying the familial warmth." The spiritual warrior rejects that familial warmth. Rather, he claims the whole universe as his home. As the Bhagavad Gita puts in the 14th chapter, unaffected by outward joys and sorrows, or by praise and blame, secure in his divine nature, regarding with equal gaze a clod of mud, a stone, and a bar of gold, impartial toward all experiences, whether pleasant or unpleasant, firm-minded, untouched by either praise or blame, treating everyone alike, whether friend or foe. Free from the delusion that in anything he does, he is the doer. Such a one has transcended nature's triune qualities. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
We've got some wonderful devotees at the Ananda Yoga Teacher Training Retreat on Whidbey Island. And last week we had a whole bunch of pilgrims to the Yogananda shrines in Los Angeles. And so in this week, we still have lots of people here, so welcome. Thank you for coming. And we'll be hearing from the pilgrims next week. I see some of you went on that pilgrimage, and some of us were blessed to hear some of your stories last Tuesday night. But next week, Reeman and Padma will be back, and Reeman and Padma are our spiritual directors here at our Seattle Center. And we will hear many stories, among other things, about the topic. So it should be a really fun one. This topic, it's pretty intense. I don't know. Hopefully you kind of listened with an understanding that, especially the Bible part of it is very allegorical and symbolic, and I'll have a chance to explain a little bit more about that. So, understand how that does fit in because then the Bhagavad Gita reading was just the opposite. It was telling us the results of what the Bible reading was trying to tell us. So I'll explain that as we go through here. But I want to start off with something a little lighter, just to get the things going. It's about a widow who had a dog that she was very attached to, and I think many of us can relate to this as a dog or a kitty or whatever it is. And anyway, all her life, most of the last parts of her life, she'd spent with this dog. And so when it passed on, of course, it was very, very hard for her. And so she went to her priest, and because she was very much into going to the Catholic Church next door, and she asked him, she said, "Would you please do a mass for my dog? It would mean so much to me." And the priest said, "Well, I'm so sorry." He said, "We just can't do that here at the church, but if you go down the street, there are some other churches. There's a Baptist church there that's perhaps open to doing something like that. And so maybe try that." And she said, "Well, okay, I guess so." She said, "But could you tell me, how much should I pay them? I mean, I don't know that church." And she said, "I'm willing to offer $5,000. And the priest looked at her and said, "Oh." She said, "Well, my daughter, well, that's different." He said, "Why didn't you tell me your dog was Catholic?" Anyway, I don't mean to pick on the Catholic Church, but it's just kind of the way the joke went. Many people have come from that background, and it's got a wonderful history of producing a lot of wonderful saints. So we just kind of do it with our tongue in cheek when we do these things. So it's certainly an example of not having a lot of courage of conviction, because the title is "Victory Demands the Courage of Conviction." And it's like, well, what are we really talking about? What kind of victory? It's obviously not the Seahawks or the Mariners type victory. We're talking about something different. And yeah, it is. What we're talking about is victory with ourselves over our biggest challenge, and why we're here is victory over Maya, victory over the delusion that this physical world is, the reality that exists. I mean, it does exist. I mean, believe me, I've got a biology background and I study science, and this was really a hard concept for me for a while, because I thought, well, if you couldn't touch it and taste it and feel it and, pour it into beakers and get things happening, it couldn't be real. But, science has gone a long way since those 45 years ago. And they really know that, this physical reality is just energy. And what's energy? And they even say, well, what is this energy? And they said, this energy is really intelligence. It's just condensed into matter, and it's condensed with different types of vibration. So as we know, if things vibrate at different qualities, it has a different look to it. And so matter is just different forms of vibration. It's just a condensation of that vast intelligence. And so what this delusion is, the victory is that we need, and why we're here, is we need to begin to go beyond that understanding that we are the physical body, that this physical world is the only reality. It certainly is a reality we have to function in, but it's only the means to that higher reality. That higher reality meaning, that we really are spirit. We really are children of God. And our goal is, as the saints tell us, and as the saints have showed us in their lives, is to become like them, to get rid of all these attachments and desires that keep us into this understanding or thinking that we are this physical reality. So that's the victory over which we are shooting for. We're trying, not a good word, we're trying to get to. And it takes a lot of courage, doesn't it, to do this, because it's our duty to do it. And yet, the world doesn't support it at all. As you know, out there, we're, sitting in here, we're a vast minority. And of course, there are many other truth-seeking organizations, truth seekers in other disciplines. So we have company, but it's still quite a minority. So it takes a lot of courage and conviction to hold on to that understanding when, everything around us is pulling us into this physical world. We want to get ahead in the world. We want to be a success. And we need to pay our bills. And, we need to do certain things also. And so it's always this kind of this push-pull going on. So it takes a lot of courage to affirm and continue to grow spiritually on the path. But it's what we need to do. And Jesus, in the reading today, talked about taking, when he came was not to come, he didn't come to send peace, but a sword. And when you just send daughter against mother and mother-in-law against daughter-in-law and on, it's pretty scary to hear that. And yet, he wasn't talking about it directly in that fashion. What he was saying was, yes, this life is a battle. It's a battle between us and our ego. And so we need to take that sword of discrimination that we all have. We need to make choices. Isn't our life one of choices? Constantly. When we're little, some of the choices are made for us. But as we get older, we are constantly making big and little decisions every minute of the day about what it is, not only what it is that we do, not what it is that we speak, but what it is that we're thinking. Have you ever thought about that? We have a choice about what we think about. That's probably the hardest one of all, to be conscious of that and to decide, do you want to think about that? I know if I was raised in a family where we basically had AM radio. I never had music in my life. And it was only when I heard the songs of Swami Kriyananda that I got what music was. It was such a powerful medium. And so occasionally I still turn on the radio, listen to some news. And it doesn't take long before you can feel all that negative stuff hold on and pull down. The energy goes down. And then you turn on that music and the energy goes up. It's like black and white. What can you do so that you can be conscious of making those choices? I'm choosing to listen to the news and get all bummed out. Or, what can I do about it? Yes, I can vote. Yes, I can support in certain ways, which I do. But to have that, my tape that goes around in my head, no. I want that tape that's going to tell me that I'm a child of God, that I have what it takes to go all the way and to find that joy that I'm looking for, that you're looking for, that we're all looking for. Because we know that this material world just takes us on this continual loop. We're happy, we're sad, we're full of pain, we're full of bliss. It just goes on and on. And so we want to get off of that roller coaster. And so this is what Jesus is telling us. We need to use that sort of discrimination. And it's interesting because we can ask ourselves, well, why is it so hard? I remember asking myself that when I started to learn what was going on in this world, after being bumped around a lot, like most of you probably. And I thought, well, why does it have to be so hard? Why can't we just get it and, be there? And yet, there's a wonderful little story that I found in a book that Jyotish and Devi have written recently called The Touch of Light. And they're little antidotes, little blogs that they do. But this was a wonderful story that illustrates that. Because the story is about a family that had a terrarium, and for the children, they had two little children, and they decided they'd watch the butterflies hatch out of the little chrysalises. If they were moths, we'd call them cocoons. But it's a chrysalis. It's a hard-shelled coating that the butterfly has to come out of versus a moth comes out of a cocoon, which is the soft stuff. Anyway, we usually always call it a cocoon, but you know what I mean. So anyway, they were watching these chrysalises, and one of them started to vibrate a little bit and move, and so they were all gathered around watching this butterfly start to come out of its encasement. And it took a long time. They watched the butterfly having to chew open a little hole in that encasement. Chrysalis is very hard. It's a very hard shell. And they had to crack through that shell, and then it had to pull its whole body, first its head, and then it started to pull out its wings bit by bit. It was very difficult, a big struggle for this butterfly. And eventually it got its last wings out, and they were all crumpled up. And so it sat there on the branch for quite a while, and you could see it just pumping the fluids into the wings so that the wings started to open up and become strong. And finally the butterfly was able to fly. And then the next one started to tremble, and it was going to start to hatch too. And the children said, well, let's help this poor thing. Look at how the others had to struggle. Let's help him. And so the dad took a little razor and very gently cut open the chrysalis, and so that this butterfly could emerge with a lot less struggle. It just kind of went through that crack and just kind of opened up, and there it was, and it was on the branch quite quickly. But it didn't last. It soon tumbled to the ground on the bottom there of the terrarium, and it was dead. And so, the children, of course, are brokenhearted, but they learned a lesson, didn't they? That sometimes we have to struggle to get what it is that we need in order to move forward. And even the natural world, as much as a butterfly, I watched a dragonfly do that very thing once as it emerged out of its little nymph thing that it was in. I watched it come out wing by wing, and it took over a half hour to just watch this ugly critter turn into this beautiful, beautiful butterfly. And so, we too have to emerge from our cocoon, where we are started. Most of us here have started. You started to nibble away at the hole, you got your head poking out now maybe. Whatever it is, we don't know. But it's a struggle. And it's okay that it's a struggle, because why? It gives us the strength we need. It brings us the tests, the trials, the strength to do what it is that we need to do to remove all that stuff that we've built up over incarnations. I mean, this is just one little lifetime. The masters say we have been here in order to be in this human body. We have been through millions of lifetimes. And so this stuff has built up. And so it takes a while to begin to recognize it and begin to just let it go. And just like that butterfly, we slowly, slowly begin to puff up, but allow those qualities, those spiritual qualities to shine forth, and the other qualities to go in the background and to go away. I know recently I had a test, a big test. I'm still in it, but I'm a person that really likes to be physically active, and I'm out there climbing mountains as soon as the weather gets nice, or at least hiking trails now. Anyway, I was really looking forward to August because I had a big trip planned, and I was going to really be out in nature and all the stuff I love. And well, lo and behold, Divine Mother had another plan, and so she let me have some discs in my back rupture. So in my lower back, I got 2 spinal discs that ruptured, one pushing outward, one pushing inward, so the pain was quite universal. And I never experienced anything quite that bad. And so I was basically physically helpless. I could lay in bed, and I could somehow manage to get up, but that's about it. And I eventually got so I could at least sit in a chair. And at first I was really bummed out by it. And I was letting that bummed out feeling, permeate my whole consciousness, and it was awful. It's kind of like I felt like I'd stepped on this elevator that was going down, and I was riding it down, and I was just riding it into that down stuff. And at some point, I don't know if it took me a week, I don't know how long it took, but at some point I said, this is not what I'm going to do here. Everything that happens to us is because of God's will. I mean, there's nothing in this life that is a coincidence, even though we might think it is. It's to bring us what it is that we need to grow, even if it's just in some little way, to be a little more kind, or to let go of some animosity we might have had, or to reach out in some way, whatever it is. And so this was a reason. I said, okay, I guess I'm not going to have all that fun. There must be something else. And so I kept, so what I did, and I challenge you to do this when you're going through something. I know some of you have and are, but start looking at what you appreciate about what's happening to you. So I thought, well, I really appreciate that I can go out in my chair and sit in the sun. I mean, normally sitting in the sun was not my thing. I'd be running, or I'd be tearing away somewhere because I got such joy in that. And so I just enjoyed slowing down and just enjoying sitting in the sun. And when I did that, people would come visit me. And I so enjoyed talking to people as they came to visit me, which I never made time for because I was always running around. It was beautiful. And so it became easier to say, and I was so thankful that my sister was able to come. And she just gave up her vacation too. And she just nursed me for about 4 weeks. She was just there for me. And we got to share in a way that we probably hadn't done in a long time. So every day I put forth what I was appreciating. And it felt like getting off of this down elevator, stepping across, and I got on the up elevator. And as soon as I got on that up elevator, and I felt that rising energy, because that's all it is, I was putting out the energy. I was saying, thank you, God, for the sun. Thank you now that I can at least get in my car and get in and out of the car. I couldn't drive, but I could move around a little bit. And every little win, I was thanking God and saying, this is good, and I was seeing the good. And it goes hand in hand. You put out the energy, you see those things, and you bring more of that to you. And so, I've really enjoyed it. I don't enjoy the pain, but, then I brought some healing to me that's really working, and I've got this hope that, yes, someday I will. Hopefully, they keep telling me, don't go at it too fast, be slow. But I will be able to go back to normal and get out there on the trails again, but I'm not going to hurry it. I've learned that, that was a part of me, and that brings a lot of joy to me because I feel God's presence out there in the mountains. I always have. But I also needed to feel the joy of being able to look at those littler things and appreciate people more, people that are willing to help. I got so many people saying, how are you? How can I help? And my affirmation was, well, I'm getting better every day. And I still say that, and because, as I was saying that, I felt it. I am better today than I was yesterday. Every day I'm getting better. And, not only physically, but, my energy got better every day. So these tests are to help make us stronger. And I'm sure you all can relate to what I've been saying. It really is kind of a moment-by-moment thing that we make our choices. Do we choose to be upward positive? Do we choose to let go of perhaps some of those comfort things, or are we choosing the other? There's a wonderful poem that came to my mind when I was in high school, I think it was. This was by Robert Frost. Probably most of you know about it. I used to know this poem, but I can't remember it all now. It's called The Road Not Taken. And I thought it was very appropriate to this topic, so I wanted to read it and just think about it here. 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, and leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. And yet knowing how way leads on way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So choices, and what road do we take? Do we take the one that perhaps isn't as well traveled. If you're here, I'd say, yes, you've made that choice. But the choice keeps happening. You know, it isn't just one choice. For us, we're still needing to make constant choices, moment by moment. And you take the road that your heart is leading you to, whether it's well-traveled or not. And do we ever go back and travel the road? Well, sometimes. Sometimes we do. And, you know, for some reason, there's reasons for that, so we do it. And then eventually, you know, we will find a way again that will bring us on that path that's right for us. Because for every one of us, you know, we're all individuals. There's no right way. What we do know is that the masters show us what it is that we need if we open our hearts to them. If we open our hearts and say, you know, show me. I mean, if you were going to learn how to fly an airplane, you certainly wouldn't get in and fly one. Most people wouldn't. You know, you'd get a teacher. You'd learn how to do it. And so open your hearts to whatever spiritual teacher that you resonate with, that you can feel that understanding, that saint, that power, you know, if they're in their body or not, is right here with you, guiding you all the way. I know there's another story that I think is very appropriate to this topic, and I've told this one before, but I just find it so appropriate, and some of you, of course, haven't heard about it, because, you know, we think we're making the choices, and, you know, I keep saying you make the choice. You know, do you take the road less traveled? Do you follow whatever, your friends? You know, you're making the choices, but then I'm going to have to say, this is kind of the Indian way. The Indians don't say it's either or, they say it's both and. And so I'm saying it's both and. Because, yes, you're making the choices, but then again, you're really not. God is in charge. And God is leading you always and everything. And so it's really, if you can tune into that power, you know, what you're doing is following God's will. And it might seem like a struggle, it might seem wrong, but if you're really trying your best, you will be led forward. This story I'm talking about was told to me by Joe Tish. Again, he's now the spiritual director of Ananda and does come here to visit once or twice a year now. And they're over in India. They spend a lot of time in India. But he had a dream, and he was on this big ship. It was kind of like a kind of picture of like a pirate ship, you know, with the three masts. And they were sailing. And he and Vidura, who was the community manager at the time, kind of some of the leaders of the Nanda village, were at this big wheel, you know, guiding the ship. And all the friends, all the devotees were on board. You know, it was just this full of God-seeking, truth-seeking people. And of course, Swami Kriyananda, the founder of Ananda, was there too. He was sitting in his deck chair on the deck and just enjoying the beautiful day. But then they noticed this big cloud coming, and then the wind, and then the waves, and it got really pretty rough. And the sea was roiling around, the boat was tipping, and they were looking around, and devotees were hanging on for dear life. Some of them were jumping ship, and they looked over, and they were just battling this wind, you know, fearing that they were going to lose the ship. And they looked over, and Swami Kriyananda was sitting in his chair. He was just like nothing had changed, just like it was a sunny, calm day. He was just looking around, smiling, just as happy as he could be. And then Jyotish noticed that suddenly it's like the water parted, and there underneath he could see there was like a railroad track, and the ship was anchored to this track. And so the ship was just going right along. It was just following the track. You could see it was going this way, and then it was going to go that way. And he was just steering it. It's kind of like when you go to Disneyland, you get on that little boat, you know. There's nothing you can do about it. You want to just sit back and just let it happen. Well, that's kind of what our life is. Isn't that something? We're kind of on this boat, you know, and God has this plan, and we need to tune into that flow. And so, yes, we're making choices based on that flow, but then if we can make those choices in tune with the divine, because it's already planned out. See, it's both and here. It's already planned out what it is. And so the more we can let go, we're not going to rationalize it. You know, we think we're going to get the answers up here. It doesn't come through rationalization. It comes through letting go and through tuning in and just taking the little baby steps. Because I don't know about you, but I had no idea what my life was going to be like. It was like, you just kind of go to this, you go to that. It felt like something like I was ricocheting off like ping pong balls. But, you know, it was my way of just tuning in. And so just tune in and take the next step, whatever that is. It might just be a little step, but it doesn't matter. If you're doing it with the understanding that you're trying to do God's will, then it begins to open up for you. And that's really what it's all about. The final challenge, as we know, is offering our very egos into that state of oneness. And as we take these steps, that is where it leads us. I and my Father are one, as Jesus said, and that is where we're headed, and that is where we'll go. And we will get there with Divine Mother's grace. So let's meditate a minute.